staff. We're going to call this meeting to order now. It is 6:33 on April 17, 2023. And this is a public meeting of the City of Portland Police Accountability Commission Subcommittee on Oversight Staff. If Spanish language interpreters Lizette and Adriana can give the information on Spanish language interpretation now, that would be wonderful.
Buenas noches. Esta reunión es una reunión pública sujeta a la ley del Estado de Oregón y a las normas administrativas de la ciudad de Portland, así que será grabada. Disponemos de interpretación al español para esta reunión, así que al acceder a la interpretación en español verá la señal de video de los oradores, pero la señal de audio será sustituida por la de las intérpretes. Para acceder a ella, por favor haga clic en Interpretación en los controles de la reunión de Zoom en la parte inferior de su pantalla y seleccione Español. Gracias.
Thank you so very much. The city also offers ASL interpretation, which is being provided by Mary and Christine. Please pin their video feed to see their interpretation throughout the meeting. The closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance, but please note, this is an automatic captioning service and it is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to the public meeting notice or directly to policeaccountability@portlandoregon.gov to ask for other access assistance, including interpretation into other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to City of Portland Administrative Code and Oregon State law and is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions using Zoom's Q&A feature. As the commissioners are presenting and or discussing things, if attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meeting and future meetings and agenda topics. We'd like to be clear that not all questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, both the question and the answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A icon in the middle of the screen. I would like now to turn this over to our co-chairs for the land acknowledgement.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm one of the two co-chairs of this subcommittee. I'm going to do the land acknowledgement, and as I say every time I read this, this is the city's version of the land acknowledgement. If I were writing this, I would probably say something stronger, but here we go. We acknowledge that the rivers, lakes, streams, and lands of the lower Willamette River rest upon the occupied territories of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Calumet, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes. We recognize the many villages, traditions, cultures, and relationships that existed along the river since time immemorial. We recognize these tribes stewarded these lands and rivers since time immemorial for future generations. We recognize and undertake responsibility for the destruction of the river and land, of traditional food sources, sacred places, and multifaceted ways of life. We acknowledge the economic and social values that enabled the harm to the river, including systemic racism, classism, and other systems of oppression that perpetuated harm against Black, Indigenous, and immigrant communities along the river. With this acknowledgement, we commit to honoring and learning from the past and working towards a more equitable and sustainable future for the lower Willamette River. We commit to seeking solutions that acknowledge the inequities of past socioeconomic policies and the harm done to people and our relationships, these lands and waters.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Dan. Really appreciate that. We're now going to review our community agreements. And I'm going to read the first part, and then I would like you to read the next two screens silently, and then on the third slide, I will ask the question. So the Police Accountability Commission agrees to approach its work with honesty, openness, and willingness to work together to develop and achieve shared goals. The commission will work with each other, city staff, and external support to address issues as they arise, communicate openly, and meet each other's needs as part of working to meet the city's needs as a commission. All commission members, as well as city staff support and external support, will abide by these agreements as we perform the duties and mandates of the commission. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next slide, please. If you notice that a conversation is coming close to violating a community agreement, please call your fellow commission members in gently and with compassion. If you are called in, please take a moment to consider how you can best participate in the space while still respecting the community agreements and making space for everyone. Do we all commit to following the community agreements for today's meeting and to gently calling in our colleagues and collaborators if needed? I'd love to see some sort of jazz hands or something. Thank you so very much. Truly appreciate that. All right, I will now pass it over to the co-chairs to discuss the timeline.
All right. Well, this meeting is part of the Police Accountability Commission structure and details phase of work, which focuses on the form of the new system. Future phases of work will develop how the new system relates to the rest of the city government and the transition plan from our current system to the new one. The commission will work until August 31st, 2023, and will present all proposed changes to the city council for their consideration and approval. Next slide. Yep. This slide shows the outcome documents for the structure and details phase based on the agenda and scope approved by the commission. This subcommittee focuses on how the staff, led by a director that reports to the new oversight board, will be structured, including the qualifications and hiring process for the director, how legal counsel will work, and other staff structures such as mediators and advocates. Next slide. This slide is the current project plan for the structure and details phase of the Police Accountability Commission's work. It will be updated as needed throughout this phase of work. This slide is for members of the public to be able to understand how the commission gets from now through the end of the phase, which focuses on identifying areas of agreement among commission members as to the form the new system will take. Today's meeting fits into the green box with the red border near the middle of the screen. Next slide. And following today, here are the upcoming meetings of the PAC. We'd like to highlight, if this subcommittee needs another meeting, it will be next Monday, April 24th. If it doesn't need another meeting, April 24th will be a full commission meeting. The subcommittee on board membership will hold its next meeting this Thursday, April 20th, and may conclude its work then. The full commission will also meet next Thursday, April 27th. And today's meeting agenda includes time for members to update on what they've worked on since our last meeting on March 3rd, followed by co-chairs walkthrough of the draft areas of agreement on oversight staff. This may include a decision to refer the documents to the full commission. The subcommittee will also take public comment later in today's agenda.
Thank you so much. Co-chairs will be walking through the draft next. But do any other members of the subcommittee want to update their colleagues or the public on what they've been working on since the last meeting on April 3rd? Co-chair Dan.
Yeah, well, I just want to kind of fill everybody in and people following along at home that Co-Chair Amechi and I went through the document that we've been working on for the last month and a half or so, took all the sections that we talked about at our previous meeting and put them into that top section we started looking at last time. But now the top section is the draft document we're looking at tonight. So the bottom half it's still there if anybody wants to compare it to what we did. But just to leave the research there to be transparent about it, but we're only going over the top section tonight. And the other thing is that at the recommendation of Commissioner Pitts, I did make a spreadsheet about the budget, and I want to have staff pull up the disclaimer, which is page 1 of the spreadsheet. And I sent this out today. Sorry I didn't get to it, get it out earlier. There's just a long story, but anyway. So here is the disclaimer. Okay, I want to say this very clearly into the record. This spreadsheet is a completely rough estimate of how much it might cost us, to run the new civilian oversight body being designed by the Police Accountability Commission. The figures regarding payment for various jobs and tasks are made based on rough estimates of what's being paid to current city employees in similar jobs, or in some cases based on projected expertise and workload. They are back of the envelope calculations. This is not going to be part of the presentation that's working with the City Council, unless the Commission wants to do that, nor is it meant to constrain the new board members or the director they hire in any way. It is merely a worksheet to be sure the proposed function of the oversight body drawn from previous phases of the PAC's works and the discussions of this subcommittee are possible given the proposed budget of about $12.3 million. Or as I described it earlier, we want to make sure we're not building a boat in the basement. All right, so if you would then go to the second page, which I hope it will be resized. Yeah, so it's a little harder to read unless you zoom in, but this is the spreadsheet that we worked on, and I did most of the work on it just so I can take most of the blame for it. But the gist of it is that we went through, I went through the list of the kind of tasks we wanted to make sure the board staff would undertake, assigned a certain number of people to that based on the workload that we predicted in previous phases. Put down the specific contract roles of mediators and advocates that we've been talking about, and then talked about board member. I use the word stipends. We're not sure that's the right word. I just want to, again, be clear on the record for that. And kind of independently, but in sync with the board membership subcommittee that's working on a proposal for the cost of the board itself, came to a similar amount of money that what they were going to propose. So if you look at the bottom line, the lower left corner of the spreadsheet, the $12.3 million that we're being told is about 5% of the police bureau's budget. The amount of money that on this spreadsheet adds up to $31,000 less than that $12.3 million. So I think we're in relatively good shape. Clearly, things are going to be different when the board's actually in place and the director is hired and they start seeing how many mediations there are, for instance, in a year or whatever. But this is just to make sure that there'd be enough money to do the things that we're hoping to do. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Co-Chair Dan. And again, we're not going to be discussing this evening, and we're going to go right into the draft areas of agreement on oversight staff. And we can reference other documents and resources if needed. I will say we ask you to follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you may speak multiple times. Please be facilitated And remember that we use a weighted stack in our discussions. And finally, please be forward-looking in your comments. Would the co-chairs like to get us started?
Sure. Well, actually, I don't really have anything to discuss if we want to get into the, yes. Great, perfect. So nothing to discuss before this, but now we're going to get into it. Basically, I'll be doing the first section A, and we're going to be kind of splitting it up. And I will, yeah, I'll just wait for staff. There we go. So A, agency director. A1, qualifications, hiring process. A1A, the board shall hire a director who shall be appointed by and serve at the will and pleasure of the board. A1B, selection of the board shall be done through a community process led by the Oversight Board.
Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions? Can we move on? Love to see those jazz hands. Thank you.
A1C, hiring process. A1C1, the board shall select the director in accordance with the city's human resource policies and rules and any other applicable laws by the following process. A1C1I, a subset of the board hiring committee, for example, which could be made up of board leadership and or others, shall work with the director of the Bureau of Human Resources or designee to create a job posting that comports with the necessary and desired qualifications for a director. A1C1II. The hiring committee shall work with community members to assess minimum qualifications and select at least 3 candidates best qualified to interview. A1CIII. The full board shall interview the candidates, and the top scoring candidates will be moved forward. A1C, I'm going to switch to numbers 4. At that meeting or the next appropriate meeting, the full board shall vote whether to hire the top scoring candidate. A1C5. If the top candidate is not appointed, then the hiring committee shall present the next top scoring candidate to the board for consideration. The selection process shall continue as stated until the board votes to appoint a candidate as the director. This shall include reopening the recruitment process if none of the interviewed candidates are appointed.
Very good on A1C1. Commissioner Tim.
Yeah, thanks. Just on the last point, just concerns me that if someone seems good enough to make the top 3 to get interviewed, but then in the interview things really go sideways, that the way things are written, I think we would be stuck hiring that person because it seems like you would exhaust all 3 interviewed candidates before reopening the recruitment. So my only thought is I wonder if you want to make it that clear that sort of you're going to interview 3 people at least, and then you're going to hire one of those people or then reopen things is kind of how it reads to me. And so I kind of think that might get you stuck if you were to interview someone that really was not a good fit at all.
Do you have a, go ahead.
Right ahead. Co-chair Jay, please go right
I was
ahead.
just going to ask if you had like if you have any suggestions for, yeah, like where we can notate that, or like what kind of change, like what we should change.
Off the top of my, I mean, it's just the very last clause, the 5, and I guess just if the top can't, you know, it does say at the next meeting, the full board shall vote whether to hire the top scoring candidate. If the top candidate is not appointed, then they shall present the next top scoring candidate to the board for consideration. And I guess that's where maybe you want to make it clear that the board would then vote on that candidate to either take the position or not. I guess it just got a little confusing to me, the last line where it says it shall continue as stated until the board votes to appoint a candidate as the director. This shall include reopening the recruitment. Maybe on rereading it, I understand how you're saying things would go, but on the first reading, it seemed to me that you would be stuck sort of hiring one of those three. So I may, on reading it a third time, withdraw my concern.
Any other concerns? Co-chair Dan.
Yeah, I think to fix your confusion, Commissioner Pitts, maybe we just say at the end of the first sentence, for consideration and a vote.
Any other comments, concerns? Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Thank you. May we move on? Yes, we can. Next part.
All right. A2, authorities, duties. A2A, the director shall manage the professional administrative staff and professional investigators and to make operational and administrative decisions. And then, yeah, there was this question about if a hiring freeze would apply, and I don't know, did we get a response to that? I think we did, but I don't remember now. But we can read through it and then staff will chime in later. So A2A1, the director may appoint other personnel necessary to carry out the duties of the oversight agency, keeping within the adopted budget. A2A2, the director shall delegate to a designee any or all duties, appropriate duties or responsibilities. A2A3, the director or designee shall conduct outreach to create a pipeline of employees for the board by engaging people in impacted communities. A2B, ensure that a qualified staff person goes directly to the scene of officer deadly force incidents and other incidents which may involve misconduct needing immediate attention. And yeah, there's a verb that's needed in A2B.
Thank you so much, Co-Chair. Commissioner Monica.
Oh, just a quick grammatical fix in the first sentence. The director shall manage and will make operational administrative decisions.
Co-Chair Dan. Thank you so much, Commissioner Monica.
I'm fairly sure we took that language directly out of the charter, but we can just say that we modified it to make it a little more clear. But just so you know, that's where it came from.
Thank you. Any other questions, concerns, additions we want to make in this section? All right. Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Go ahead, Co-Chair Dan.
This is it's not strong opposition. I think that the meaning of the charter language is that the staff can make operational administrative decisions as well as the director. So it's not just that the director will make them decisions on their own. That's part of that delegation that we talked about in A2A2.
What if we just say and make operational administrative decisions? It's just, and yeah, it's the grammar's just a little funky.
Real quick, this is the exact language of the charter. So I think what happened is the first part was changed to the director shall from the board shall hire a director, and that made this no longer grammatically accurate in the way, but how you want to fix that is of course up to the members.
How would you like to fix this?
Oh, I think Commissioner Arce was correct that it's about the director making those decisions. So we should just put it back the way it was with her proposed change.
Okay. Thank you. Any other changes to anything in this section? Commissioner Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can get rid of the will probably altogether, and just have and make operational, et cetera, et cetera. Get rid of the auxiliary verb.
Very good. Commissioner Catherine?
So if we're voting on this section, are we including the note there, the director shall ensure on A to B?
Yes.
Okay.
So we want, yes. Staff?
Technically, a member needs to propose that, just to clarify. It's a suggestion from staff, but we can't propose anything. So
I was nodding my head. So yeah, let's just type that in there, staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other proposed changes? Thank you, Corinne. All right, then I will ask a question. Is there strong opposition to the proposed changes, both in A2A and A2B? Is there general agreement to the proposed changes? I see jazz hands. Thank you very much. Can we move on? Thank you. Next section, please.
Right. A2C. The director shall adopt I cannot say this word, promulgate, amend and rescind rules and procedures required for the discharge of duties, including policies and procedures for receiving and processing complaints, conducting investigations and reporting findings, conclusions, and recommendations. All such policies shall be sent to the board for review before adoption.
Are there any questions or comments or proposed changes to A2C? May we move on? Very good.
A2C1. The Oversight Board is empowered to write its own bylaws covering anything not covered in law. The board shall seek input from, but is not required to get approval from the director.
Are there any comments or proposed changes or questions? Can we move on? Nope. Commissioner Monica. Go right ahead.
Just a quick, maybe this is not a quick question, but is for that statement? Is it more about the oversight board than it is about the director? Or are we saying, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it seems like we're talking mostly about the oversight board in that, and A2C1, and this is about the director. Does that make sense?
Commissioner, or I'm sorry, Co-Chair Dan.
Yeah, well, you'll see we pulled this out of the board membership draft document, and I think the idea was to make it clear that the director's duties do not include writing the bylaws for the board. I mean, we can change the order of it if we want to make it, you know, put the director's role earlier on, but I think the idea is to be clear that so see, that's a subsection to the section we just read, but to make it clear that that's not one of the rules that the directors discharging their duties by working on. Is that helpful?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do we need to rewrite it, or do you think it can stay that way?
Yeah, I wonder if we should say the board may seek input from the director, but it's not required to get approval from them when writing its own bylaws. It's something so that it's more about what the director, what we're talking about the director more than the oversight board in this moment. Yeah.
Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general, oh, I'm sorry, Co-Chair Jay.
This is kind of a small thing, but I was wondering if we could maybe remove own before bylaws, just, you know, when writing its bylaws. And other than that, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Commissioner Tim?
Yeah, sorry, super quick. I think it's a very valid point, and I think to totally make it be speaking from the perspective of the director and what the impact and expectation is of the director, we could reorganize it just a little bit further, just to say the director may provide input to the board when they are writing their bylaws, but the director will not have a role in approving the bylaws. So then we're really just saying, what's the director doing in terms of what the board's working on?
All right, we have a different sentence. We have the sentence in gray that's highlighted, underlined in gray. I would like us to go ahead and see if there is strong opposition to this proposed change for A2C1. Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Very good. Are there any other comments? Can we move on? Okay, let's go ahead. Thank you.
A3A. Oh wait, A3, performance reviews of the director and other staff, including removal. A3A. The board conducts annual performance reviews and manages the executive director. A3B. The director shall be removed from office only upon a finding of cause and by a vote of a supermajority of the board.
Are there any comments or proposed changes or questions to this section? Co-Chair Dan.
I just want to note that we have in the comments on the right there that the board, in reviewing the director, is contemplating the draft, but not how other staff are reviewed. Bear in mind, there are some positions the board is going to be helping to select, which we will get to later, but the question is, should they be involved in the performance reviews of those staff members as well? So we might want to, when we get to that section, we might want to double back and stick a note in here if that's what we want to do. And that question mark in A3A is because we had broadly discussed it, but not finding that, so that question mark can go away if everybody agrees to that A3A. Thank you.
All right, who else has raised their hand? I am trying to find a gallery view. Any, Commissioner Monica.
Shall we take out executive in front of director in A3A, or are we talking about a director or executive director?
We just, that language came directly from another city, sorry.
Thank you. Staff, you had your hand up there for a second.
Same exact point that Commissioner Monica made.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Thank you so much. Can we move on? Great.
A4, qualifications. A4A, the director shall be a person who is well equipped to analyze problems of administration and public policy and shall have a working knowledge in criminal justice commensurate to the powers and duties of the office. Experience and knowledge should also include working with communities impacted by police misconduct.
Thank you. Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions? Can we move on? Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, now I'm going to pass it on to Co-Chair Handelman.
Why, thank you. All right, so I'm going to be your cruise director for B1 through B3. We split this in half. So B is staff structure, qualifications, duties, and board involvement in hiring. And we put a note for this sole section that we just want to include in the document for the full commission to think about, which says, note, to maintain independence between the board and police, it is recommended that former and current police officers not be hired as staff. And we're putting it as a recommendation and not a caveat or not a shall, because it only says that in the charter about the board itself, but not about the staff. And so I think this is a question we should let the full commission weigh in on. So that's that note. All right, so B1 is the an inspector general or police auditor with full access to bureau records, training, and staff. The auditor, monitor, inspector general, not a very good sentence. It will be in charge of auditing records and other aspects of the accountability system. So maybe we should say will be in charge of auditing records. They're in B1A. B1B, audits conducted by staff will include police practices, policies, training, and directives, including regular audits of police communications with the public, such as news releases and social media. And staff, I don't know if you heard, I'm suggesting that just to make B1A more of a sentence, just say will be in charge of auditing records.
Commissioner Catherine.
So maybe this is obvious to other people, but because in so many other systems, the auditor or inspector general is separate from the oversight authority. Maybe we need to be specific that they are a part of the oversight bureau, that they're not separate from it. Because that, I mean, that question comes up in my mind when I read this.
Do you have suggested language? I'm sorry, staff.
Yeah, to Commissioner Catherine's point, and then a broader thing, the more narrow part is that its inclusion here is somewhat implicit that it's part of it. It may be helpful to say that, you know, very explicitly, but the fact that it is included here in this section would implicitly says that it's part of the bureau, especially if it's being hired. However, it may be helpful to make it explicit because, and this is the broader note, there's another position in the city called the auditor, which is a city auditor, that it might get confused with. There is a recommendation that the DOJ settlement agreement might have something called a monitor, which would be separate. And then there is a position at the police bureau called the inspector general, which is a police bureau staff member right now, that title. So it may be helpful to indicate that just for clarity, because there are other, whatever this title is, which this is not, it doesn't appear designed to be a title so much as a role, but just a note there that might be helpful to be clear.
Thank you so much, staff. Co-chair Dan.
Yes, well, I see there's a note here from the staff that says there shall be the auditor, monitor, inspector general in charge of auditing records. And so, but I think we should say, you know, the director shall hire, because we didn't actually say that in this section. And in terms of the title, I think we should just leave it with the various terms and come up with what the names are later. I'd rather just, again, describe what the job is right now, and we can worry about the names later.
Very good.
That addresses I think that addresses my question. Thank you.
Okay, great. Is there strong opposition to the proposed change in B1A? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Thank you.
You want to know if we can move on?
I'm sorry?
Did you want to know if we can move on?
I want, yes, to B1B.
Okay. Yeah, well, I read that into the record.
Yes, you did.
I didn't know if anybody had any comments about it.
Not seeing any, let's move on. Can we move on?
All right, so B2, I think, again, this is, needs to have the director shall hire in front of it. So B2, attorneys with local, state, and federal specializations. B2A should say, the director shall hire legal counsel to provide legal advice for the board and staff separate from the city attorney's office.
Any comments or questions? Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Wonderful. So I would like to invite us to take a break before we get into the very big long section of the B's. I would like us to take a 5-minute break. 7-minute break. Let's take a 7-minute break and be back in 7 minutes. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Let's go ahead and continue in the document. Co-Chair Dan.
Excellent. I'll wait with bated breath. Oh, there it is. All right. The document is back.
Da-da-da.
All right. So those were the first two sections were specific positions that had their own sections. This is a longer list of ideas that we came up with, the subcommittee, and that we drew in from other parts of the earlier phases of the commission. So B3, other positions recommended for board staff. It says recommended. I'm going to say that emphatically. B3A, professional staff of the board other than the director shall be appointed by and serve under the direction of the director. That's from the charter. B3B, the director shall hire part or full-time staff members focusing exclusively or in combination on. B3B1, policy work. Note that New York's policy unit does data analysis, includes lawyers, and makes monthly, semi-annual, and annual reports. B3B2, mediation. B3B3, investigation. B3B4, hearing support. B3B5, records. B3B6, outreach and community engagement. B3B7, intragovernmental affairs. B3B8, data analysis to include demographics and disparities. B3B9, equity and inclusion. B3B10, public affairs and communications. And B3B11, personnel.
Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions to this section? Can we move on?
All right, B3C. Hiring of the following staff positions shall involve the board members. B3C1, auditor / monitor / inspector general, and B3C2, legal counsel. So those are the two that were highlighted before. So I'll finish reading this, and when we're done with this, we should consider whether we want to go back to that earlier section or not. Or maybe we should just put a pin in that for the end of the meeting. B3D, the oversight system may reach outside city structures to complete its work. B3D1, the board or staff may consider working with law school faculty or students or other community resources.
Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions?
I'm seeing a little note from the staff here. Question raised about whether the director's authority to hire other staff members in the charter. Well, it doesn't say that the board members should not be involved in it. So I don't know, but I think that we should leave this in here, and if it becomes a legal issue, we can resolve that later.
Staff?
Yeah, so just to clarify, and this is a short version of it, but there is no issue, again, citing the quote there, so long as their involvement is not so great as to afford the director little discretion, which is and the details of that seem like something that'll be worked out later. So my reading of that is that it's totally fine and there's no concern at all.
Oh, good then.
Any comments, proposed changes, or questions? Can we move on? We can move on.
Co-Chair Dan, you are muted.
Sorry, B3E, advocates. B3E1, the board shall hire on a part-time or contracted basis advocates to help complainants navigate their complaints. B3E2, all advocates, regardless of paid part-time volunteer status, shall be trained both on culturally sensitive, competent support for complainants and on sexual assault / survivorship for community members. So even if someone from a relevant group isn't available when a person calls in, everyone can provide support. B3E2 sub I, or sub 1, the structure may involve paid staff with the above skills mixed with volunteers. Complainants can call in and ask for culturally competent / sensitive intake.
Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions? Can we move on? Very good.
All right. B3E3. Advocates are required to receive continuing education. B3E4. Advocates will assist the staff in delivering community education about the process. That's the end of the advocates. Do we want to go on to investigators? Or do you want to finish up?
I can ask a question here. That's fine. Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions? Can we move on? We could move on. Thank you.
Groovy. Okay. B3F, investigators. The board shall hire an appropriate number of investigators to conduct intake investigations, full investigations, and follow-up investigations as necessary. Workload shall be distributed to ensure timely investigations of all complaints.
Any comments, proposed changes, or questions? Can we move on? We can. Thank you.
Okay. B3G, mediators. The board shall arrange for paid professional mediators on an on-call, part-time, or full-time basis.
Any questions, comments, or proposed changes? Can we move on? Very good. Yes.
Now I turn it over to my co-chair for the rest of B.
All right. Staff training. Staff shall be trained on issues specific to their roles, such as B1A1 policies, B4A1 policies, B4A2 interviewing, B4A3 evidence, B4A4 patrol mandates, B4A5 operations, B4A6 legal issues including stop, frisks, and searches, B4A7 trauma-informed service delivery focused on interviewing and other community interactions, and B4A that's supposed to be 8 cultural competency. Or is that supposed to, that's a question?
That is actually the end of this section.
No, it
No,
says,
I mean,
it says Roman numeral 7 instead of Roman numeral 8.
Right. And I don't know what patrol mandates are. Can you explain what patrol mandates are?
Yeah, I think we lifted that from another city. It's the way that the officers are trained to go out on patrol. Maybe we should make that a little bit more Portland relatable. So
we say PBB directives, or?
Well, I think it's PPB patrol tactics and training is what we're getting at there. I mean, the other things are all part of PPB policies too. I think the policies covers the directives.
Okay.
Maybe we should say policies and directives, because that wasn't clear to me. I was thinking that would be like oversight directive, the policies of the oversight board, not of PPB.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments, questions, or proposed changes? Co-Chair Jay.
This is a small thing that just, in terms of, it's more aesthetic than anything else, but we do PPB patrol training and tactics, just switch them. It just sounds better in my head.
Yeah, you just gotta remember the word on the names.
Very good. Any others? Commissioner Monica?
Is it PPV? Are these all involving PPB? So interviewing, evidence, operations, legal issues, it's all PPB. So should PPB be in the first sentence before A?
Co-Chair Dan?
I don't think so, because the interviewing and evidence is about the evidence and interviewing that they are going to be doing.
Okay.
Although this raises a larger question of, are they also going to be trained on the issues of the board's policies and operations, as well as the police bureaus? So what I'm saying is that perhaps B4A should be PPB and board policies and directives, and then A5 should be PPB and board operations. Hearing these little voices in the background, I'm not sure who that is.
I don't know either. Any other questions, concerns, proposed changes? Is there strong opposition to the proposed? Oh, no, I see staff.
Sorry, couldn't find the button. Just wanted to ask about, with relation to B4A4, PPB also has an investigative arm, the patrol and investigations, and just wanted to clarify if it was deliberately designed to be limited to the patrol side of the operation as it would be.
Thank you, staff. Co-chairs?
I think the PPB operations covers everything. The patrol training and tactics was specifically something we pulled from another city. But I think it's important to enumerate that particular thing.
Thank you.
Even though it's really covered in 5.
Very good. And Corinne, thank you so much for keeping us on track. We've been talking about this for 4 minutes. Appreciate that. Are there any other comments, proposed changes, or questions? Is there strong opposition to the proposed changes being made here? Is there general agreement to the proposed changes? Very good. Thank you. We can move on.
All right. B4B. It is not necessarily appropriate for the police bureau to give administrative and legal guidance to staff. And yeah, that language is kind of might be unclear. Yeah, here are some options that staff has presented. Maybe, I don't know if, yeah, well, staff, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah. So the commission, and by virtue of the commission's ability, that the subcommittee could recommend that the commission simply have that restriction, and that's an option, and if so, then it should be the staff shall not, or something direct like that, or should would be clear there. If that's not the intention, it's up to the oversight board and you decide, but the PAC would like to suggest it. That's historically something that in previous PAC documents have been towards the end of the document, just like a separate section of here's our recommendations from the PAC's membership to the oversight board. And then the third option is if the intention is for the full commission to determine it, to simply just put kind of 2 versions and refer it without recommendation, which is something that has happened fairly frequently, as 4 or 5 times, I should say, not frequently, but occasionally as well. Having it be not necessarily appropriate is just a little bit vague as to what that intention is, and any of those options are yours to decide on.
Thank you so much, staff. Co-Chair Dan.
Yeah, well, I think that the intent here is that if there are certain circumstances, such as where the investigators don't necessarily understand a rule or procedure or a training, and they need to get administrative or legal guidance from the police bureau, if we prohibit it, then they won't be able to do that. So I think if we put it's not necessarily appropriate, then that kind of implies that when it's appropriate, they shall seek guidance from them. But in other cases, it's not appropriate.
Commissioner Monica, or I'm sorry, Commissioner Catherine.
So I wonder if we could just say something like, it is, you know, as a general matter, staff should not seek administrative and legal guidance from the police bureau. And then that, you know, that sort of states the rule, but allows for specific exceptions. And are we, I can't remember, are we referring to the police bureau as PPB or the bureau or the police bureau? What is our standard? I guess we're doing all of it. Okay. So I guess I propose that as a substitute sentence, not as a add-on to the it is not necessarily appropriate.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. Co-Chair Ajay.
Yeah.
Commissioner McDowell, did you say shall or did you say should? Because I thought I heard you say should. Like, so staff should. I was just wondering. I might have heard wrong as well.
I can't. I think shall is probably the right word there. So I'm not sure what I said, but that's probably what I meant. Shall is probably what I meant.
Commissioner Ajay again.
Then maybe we should add at the end, you know, unless necessary to perform their duties or something, because the shall is more restrictive.
That sounds good.
Any other comments, questions, suggestions? Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Very good. I see agreement. B4C.
Yeah. So there is the same question for the above one. It says right now, B4C, it is not necessarily appropriate for board staff investigators to be trained alongside administrative investigators at the police bureau. Do folks want to change it to similar, like, I guess it would read like as a general matter, board staff and wait. I don't know. Board staff investigators shall not be trained alongside administrative investigators at the police bureau unless necessary to perform their duties. I don't know if that's necessary. But... All right.
It may be the only way to get the training at that particular moment or something.
Yeah. Cool.
Any other comments, questions? Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Thank you. There is. Thank you.
All right. Staff qualifications. B5A. There may be a minimum number of years of experience required for positions such as investigators. It is not appropriate for that number to be as many as 8 years.
Any questions? Commissioner Catherine.
Yeah, will somebody remind me where 8 years comes from? It just seems a little arbitrary to have said that.
From New York.
Mm-hmm.
Staff.
During the fact-finding phase of work, when other jurisdictions were being assessed, one of the practices in other jurisdictions was in New York, where there was a requirement for 8 years of experience at minimum to be an investigator. And that was something that the commission considered to be not a best practice of the, practice to avoid, whatever, not necessarily appropriate. I can't remember the exact text. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dan.
Yeah, no, I would just add that, by putting this in, we're still leaving it to the discretion of the new board, but we're saying what we think is not appropriate. We can lower that number if people want.
Do you want more years or less years? Co-Chair Dan.
Yeah, I would say it would not be appropriate for that number to be more than 5 years or something like that, because I think that 5 years is probably plenty of experience.
Thank you. Any other additions or proposed changes or questions?
I'd say more, not appropriate for that number to be more than 5 years.
Very good. Any other proposed changes? Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement for the proposed change? Thank you so much.
All right. B5B. The oversight agency shall include as a preference in staff recruitment that candidates have experience working with community. B5B1. Other preferred background qualifications include candidates with public defense or civil rights background, investigative, policy, and/or management skills. Investigative backgrounds can include child services, personnel, medical, and insurance investigations, and other non-police agencies. And I guess, oh,
go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'll read that. B5B2. Staff shall also be versed in contemporary legal topics related to policing, such as critical race theory.
Very good. Any questions, comments, or proposed changes? Co-Chair Dan.
Well, I think we're cooking along at a pretty rapid rate. So Commissioner Iona sent a recommendation last week that included some specific recommendations that came from Eileen Luna Fireball, and 2 fields that we didn't list here under where it says personnel and medical that we added are safety and housing. So maybe we can just add those 2. So child services personnel, safety, housing, medical, and insurance investigations.
Very good. Are there any other proposed changes, comments, or questions? Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Thank you. Yes. Can we move on?
All right. B6, staff duties. B6A, staff shall review all misconduct investigations to ensure they are complete before they are sent to the board to make findings and determine discipline.
Any comments? Do you want to keep going? Co-Chair?
Let's see if there's comment. Well, Dan has a comment. Top it right in.
So before we get through this whole section, I just want to be clear that this section is called staff duties, and it means the staff, including the director. Director could do some of these, but we also already established earlier that the director can delegate all their responsibilities. So just before there's any confusion or anything about us saying exactly who's doing what, this is all anybody on the staff. We're not saying who is doing these things.
Thank you so much for that clarity. Let's do B6A. Are there any questions, comments, or proposed changes? Can we move on?
All right. B6B, staff and community engagement. B6B1, the oversight body conducts public education on the role of the oversight system and community members' rights, keeping the community informed of activities, how to file complaints without fear of retaliation, and receive input. B6B2. Wait, should I go ahead and read all of these first, or should we stop in between?
No, let's go through 5. Let's go to 5.
Okay, yeah, we'll go to 5. Yeah, B6B2. Oversight staff shall train the trainers so that they can go into specific groups/communities and train in ways that work for these groups, not just focus on training directly to the public. B6B3. Participatory public process is the goal, not just a checkbox. The public's input needs to be integrated into the outcomes. B6B4, where appropriate, staff shall set up community engagement events involving the board members. And B6B5, the outreach shall be conducted in ways to be accessible in terms of language, abilities, and other considerations.
Thank you so much, Co-Chair. Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions? Staff?
So, not in any way disagreeing with the content. I want to preface that with B6B3. It just a note that it may make sense to incorporate that up into the previous item. It's a standalone statement, less about the staff right now and more a sort of statement of value or principle. Just wanted to kind of, it sort of reads different than the rest. So just wanted to kind of flag that and ask if there was any particular reason there, because it is, I think this is from a previous document as well, but not certain. Just a question.
Thank you. Co-Chair Ajay, do you want to answer that question?
Well, I brought my hand up before this, but this is related, and I think that I like the idea of combining them, but I would like to see that participatory, that part kind of go first. So I'll just read what I think. So like B6B2 could be participatory public process is the goal, not a checkbox. Public's input needs to be integrated into the outcomes. And then oversight staff, can we just put should train trainers who can go into their community? Because the whole should train the trainers so that they could, it's not clear who the they is and all that. Yeah. And just put who can, like train trainers who can go into who can go into specific, etc. And maybe the end part might need to change too, because that does sound kind of weird. Like maybe something like instead of the board training the public directly or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. And instead of groups/communities, can we just put communities, like can go into specific communities and train in ways that work for those groups?
Any other comments, questions, or proposed changes? Co-Chair Dan?
Well, just referencing back to how we phrased things before, B6B1 should say the oversight body shall conduct public education. And then there's a verb at the end which says receive, and that can stay the way it is. And then in terms of what Co-Chair Amechi just edited, I don't think it's wrong for the board to train members of the public at large directly. So I think, you know, maybe in addition to, or just something that doesn't prohibit them from doing it.
Okay, yeah, okay, see you later. Bye.
Any other comments, proposed changes or questions? Commissioner Tim?
I think staff might be getting it, but we were just still missing the word conduct up in that top line there.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, on B6B1, is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement for the proposed change? There is. Thank you so much. On B6B2, is there a strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Yes, thank you. Great job, everyone.
All right.
Or B4 staff. Yep, perfect.
Great. I guess that would be B6, B3 now, right? Maybe. Yeah. When appropriate, staff shall set up community engagement events, including the board members. And B6, B5, the outreach shall be conducted in ways to be accessible in terms of language, abilities, and considerations. And B6, B6, communities to engage should include youth and community partners, immigrant communities, including undocumented communities, and others negatively affected by policing. B6, B7, outreach locations should include schools, libraries, community organizations, neighborhood meetings, and organizations serving the houseless population.
Thank you so much. Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions? Commissioner Ajay.
Can we change including undocumented communities to like the undocumented? Because they're already referencing kind of immigrant communities. And then also for the outreach thing, can we just say like the outreach shall be conducted in ways that are accessible in terms of language, ability, and other considerations?
Any other proposed changes? Co-Chair Dan?
I just wanted to make sure the staff heard my co-chair say that these numbers are different now. So B6, B4 is now B6, B3, and B6, B5 is now B6, B4, et cetera, because we.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Monica?
If we go down to outreach locations should include but not be limited. I just don't want that list to be something that limits them to a certain number.
Thank you. Any other additions? Okay, let's do B6, B5. Are there any, is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Thank you. Yes. Commissioner Catherine.
So I'm late on this, but I'm wondering if we should include people with mental illness in terms of the outreach communities, or either in 6 or 7, just given the history of over policing of that community.
Very good. Any other comments, proposed changes, or questions? So where do you want that placed, Commissioner Catherine?
I guess after the undocumented, you know, people with mental illness. I mean, I'm not sure those are the right words, but that's the gist of it.
Very good. Any other changes, comments, or questions? All right, is there strong opposition to the proposed change for B6B6? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Very good, thank you so much.
I'm so sorry, the video didn't get that. Could you ask that question one more time?
Yes, is there general agreement to the proposed change?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to slow down. Very good. Let's go to B6, B7. Any other comments or proposed changes? Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Very good. Thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah.
I forgot if you asked if we move or not moving on. Just kidding. We're in the same section.
Yeah, no. We move forward. Thank you so much.
Cool. All right. So B6, B7. Community engagement includes discussions on how to improve police policies and policy, which include soliciting community input.
And you want to do the next one?
Yes. B6B8. The oversight body conducts education on their activities for law enforcement personnel and bargaining unit representatives.
Very good. Commissioner Dan.
Yeah, just the comments, one that came from you, Co-Chair Amechi, is that the community engagement should also include local, state, and federal laws that are not necessarily police bureau policies. Did you want to include that in the text here?
Yeah. I'm trying to think about yeah, maybe we can just add that sentence at the end.
B6, B7. That. And then on B6, B8, looks like we need a shall there again. To oversight body shall conduct education.
You.
I think we should say oversight body because that way it includes the staff and the members of the board.
Staff.
We've been using system as since the fact-finding phase for that together. In terms of other ones, would that be acceptable? Okay. Because there's a fact-finding phase document that uses body to refer to what we call a board here specifically. It's in the definition section. So, yes.
Thank you so much. All right. Any other additions, comments, questions? Very good. Let's do B6, B7. Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Can I see that again? Thank you so much. Very good. And B6, B8. Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Very good. Thank you. Can we move on? Yep. Thank you. Go right ahead.
All right. B6C. Alone or in cooperation with other city agencies / bureaus, board staff will also audit police surveillance and other technologies. B6D. Relevant data from audits will be posted online, including on online dashboards. B6, is that supposed to be E? Staff shall train new members on bylaws and basic information and expectations using an organized curriculum. Continuing board members will train the new members on other areas and mentor them as they get up to speed. Then B6F, I feel like it's quiz. Appropriate investigative staff shall be available on call to go directly to the scene of officer deadly force incidents and other incidents which may involve misconduct needing immediate attention.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions? Can we move on? Thank you. We can move on to B7.
Wait, staff have a hand up?
Did I miss that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a quick note on C, D, and E. C is maybe something that either probably would more likely fit into the structural oversight. D is something that is probably in already the reporting and transparency document, and E is in the draft for the board membership section right now. So just a thing to flag that it may be worth, prior to it getting to the full commission's consideration, just double checking that there's no contradiction or difference in terminology there. And just a quick note, not to change anything now, but just wanted members of, I guess, the full commission to know that that might be something that we double check when we come in. I don't think C is actually in structural oversight. But I do think that the D and E are probably in those respective documents, as one has been approved by the commission last week. The other is still in draft form. So just wanted to note that, not so much to ask to change anything or suggest it, but just for future reference.
Thank you so much, staff. Very good. B7.
All right, B7. Supportive services for staffers. B7A, because police misconduct investigators are taxing on emotional and mental health, staff will be provided with mental health services. And I have a suggestion.
Go right ahead, Commissioner.
So can we change it to because police misconduct investigations are taxing emotionally and mentally? Yeah, and then like staff will be provided with mental health, et cetera, et cetera.
Any comments or other proposed changes or questions? Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? I see agreement. Very good. Well, we are at the end of a section, so let's go ahead and take another short break. We'll take another 7-minute break. And so that'll put us at 8:16. So thank you so much. Great work, everyone. Okay, let's continue on in our document to, I believe, section C.
And that's going to be me again. I just have to get myself oriented. All right, so section C, position and other logistics within the city. Oh, I forgot to say at the beginning that some of these, you'll see some additions to the subheads because we've pulled these from the the scope and agenda document. And I think I said this before, that we wrote that like 15 or 16 months ago. So we sort of fleshed out the language a little bit to show that we need to look at other things that weren't contemplated back then. So position and other logistics within the city. C1, budget. The oversight body has a publicly disclosed budget. Charter 2-1004 defines a minimum of 5% of the PPB budget for the oversight board / agency. C1B, the board / staff should be able to request more funding on an annual basis after evaluation of the budget. And I believe that we're going to say shall be able to instead of should. The discussion we had at our pre-meeting.
Very good.
Do you want me to do C1C also? I might as well, the whole section. C1C, the director shall comply with the city's purchasing procedures, but shall have sole discretion as choosing staff persons, contractors, and other employees, and making other decisions about expenses. The board may require the director make certain hiring / purchasing decisions only with the board's approval.
Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions?
I'm seeing there's some footnotes that didn't get moved there.
I'm sorry, co-chair.
Sorry, I was just noticing there's notes, but they're footnotes that just didn't get moved yet.
Okay, very good. So for C1B, is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Very good. Yes, thank you. Can we move on? Staff?
Yeah, hi. Just for C1A, I just wanted to point out it's still worded as a recognition of an existing practice. So it would, similar to I think 2 or 3 other items above, it might be helpful to have a active verb there or a forward-looking verb.
Okay, I'll bite. The oversight body shall have.
Any other changes, proposed changes to C1A? Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Very good. Thank you. Can we move on? Great. C, section C.
C2, office location. The offices may be located in a private office space. And that's permissive, not required. C2B, the offices should not be in the same building with the mayor or the police. Yeah, that's footnoted to the charter also. C2C, the office should not be in a space where security is provided by law enforcement. C2D, the location of the office shall be in a location convenient for the public. Well, I think we should say the office shall be instead of saying location of the twice.
Are there any additional changes, proposed changes, questions, or comments? Is there strong opposition to the proposed change on C2D? Is there general agreement to the proposed change on C2D?
And before we move on, facilitator, Dr. Moses, there's a comment from my co-chair that we put when we were working on this. It says, should the board not share space with any city entity to affirm the non-interference clause in the charter? And I don't know what other commission members feel about that.
We can have a conversation about that. Commissioner Tim.
I mean, if the point is to have physical separation of the office and have it be its own entity, then I feel like where it's references, it shouldn't be the mayor either. I feel like city commissioners, like you don't know with the future city government what our physical setup could look like. So I think really the point is we're just trying to be clear that we don't want any other city bureaus, agencies, or electeds to share the space. So I'm not sure the best way to phrase that, but I think that's what you're speaking to, is just expanding that to make it really clear.
Thank you, Commissioner Tim. Co-Chair Ajay.
Yeah, I think that was like the exact question was like, is that what that means? You know, the separation, is it a physical separation? I'm down either way. I think physical separation will probably be good, but I'm also realistic about like, I don't know if they might have trouble finding space, and maybe this seems doubtful, but maybe there's a bureau somewhere that'll give them space. Like, I don't know. So I guess that's a question. It seems like Tim sounded like you were saying more along the lines of physical separation. And yeah, I was curious what other folks' thoughts are.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dan.
Yeah, I have a suggestion. We should say mayor and city commissioners and any bureau or agency related to public safety. And then that way they can be hooked up with the Parks Bureau, or they can be hooked up with, some other bureau that has nothing to do with what they're doing. Does that sound right?
Staff, could you show the document again? Thank you so much. And staff, go right ahead.
Happy to defer to Commissioner Monica first, if
that sounds good. Commissioner Monica.
I was going to just support that move. I think that's a great way to give the board and the oversight system possibly a place that they don't have to pay a lot for, but it's not related to policing or the city commissioners or anything like that. I think that's a great idea.
Or any bureau or agency related to public safety. Yes. Any other comments, questions, additions? Staff?
Yeah, so right now, for reference, the Portland Street Response is under the fire department, Portland Fire and Rescue. And so there are a couple parts of that would be considered public safety as well. And so there's a couple things that may be helpful to clarify as part of the charter process, because there may be groupings of city bureaus under the new charter process. And one thing that staff can do is try to get someone from the transition team who's implementing the 2022 ballot measures that passed to try and kind of explain a little bit to probably the full commission about what that structure may look like. They're not, it's not confirmed, it's not done, it's in development, but it'll probably get to the point of a very solid draft by probably just after the the commission stops meeting. So it may be helpful to get sort of as much information as they're able to give for that to kind of clarify how the groupings may work, because that may affect the commission's thoughts on this. Thanks.
Thank you so much, staff. Are there any other comments, proposed changes, or questions? Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Thank you so much. There is. Very good. Can we move on? Great.
All right, so we're very close to the end, but I want to note that we have a pin in one thing, and there's another thing I made a note to myself about that maybe we can revisit if we have time. So don't get too excited when we get to the end. Staff, are we ready? Okay, C3. C3 question, where in the city's organizational chart is the board housed? That's the question. C3A, the board will be a standalone bureau similar to Prosper Portland. It will not be housed in any other bureau. We should just deal with that by itself.
Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions? Is there, can we move on? Can I see?
Okay, C4, suggested hours of operation. C4A, the board's offices shall be open to accept complaints for longer hours than Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., including early mornings, weekend times, and evenings. And C4B, the staff's working hours shall be staggered to avoid overlong days, but accommodate hours for both complaint intake and potential evening or weekends meetings of the board.
Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions? Staff?
Yeah, this comment is specifically for C4B, not at all C4A. I think this is probably one of the most clear places this might be outside of the scope of the work of the PAC to mandate shifts being staggered. And there are a couple other places, but just wanted to flag that and maybe a full commission conversation. But this is something that may be helpful to indicate is not within the scope of what the council's guidance to the PAC is. And this is the first time I've said that in a meeting, so I want to be clear. I'm not trying to narrow the scope too much here. Just wanted to flag that particular point since we've started, I should say. Yeah, and again, specific to C4B, there's no concern with saying it should be broader than 9 to 5 Monday through Friday at all, especially given the justification there in the barriers and best practices document.
So any comments, questions, co-chairs regarding C4B?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're just trying to make sure that we don't have anybody working 12-hour days. I just don't think that's necessary. So I think it's okay to leave it in there. And if it becomes a problem, we can work on it in a later phase.
Very good. Commissioner Monica.
Yeah, I agree too. I think with this statement, we are stating that staffing should be thought of in a more creative way so that people are not overworked.
Thank you, Commissioner Monica. All right. Are there any other comments or proposed changes or questions to these two? Can we move on?
All right, so I'm not sure what section was the one about them. Oh, go ahead.
Dan, excuse me, Co-Chair Dan. Please note that the comment is based on their, I'm sorry, there's a statement around C4B.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay,
I think we approved it the way it was written. So
Very good.
So I want to look at A2C before we go to the performance reviews. So A2C, and I'll see if I can understand my scribbled note here. So it says all such policies shall be sent to the board for review before adoption. I think we should say for review and feedback, so that it's not just a perfunctory thing where the board's just getting them and they say, I sent it to them. So I'm hoping that's an acceptable amendment.
Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions on A2C? Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? There is. Thank you.
So performance reviews is A3 when we're ready. And so I think we might want to put in an A3A sub 1 that said the board shall also participate in performance reviews of staff members whose hiring they've participated in, or something like that. It's not good English because I'm in at the end, but you know what I mean. In whose hiring they participated.
Are there any comments, proposed changes, or questions? Is there strong opposition to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to the proposed change? Thank you, there is. Can we do that again? I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Commissioner Tim.
Yeah, I'm not sure the order if this is appropriate, but could I ask a clarifying question since we're on that section on A3B where it says a supermajority of the board? I was just wondering if that is defined somewhere, what a supermajority is.
Thank you. Co-chair?
Oh, yes. Oh, welcome, new member of the commission. We've had many discussions about whether we should say what the vote should be or not, and we're going to leave that up to the board itself to decide. So we just thought it should be not just 50% plus one when you're doing something that serious, and let them decide what that number is going to be.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to be late to the discussion.
No, you're spot on.
Great.
Thank you so much. Co-chair Dan?
I was just thanking him for his input. Thank you.
Okay, great. Where else do we need to go within the document?
That's all I got.
Ooh. Staff.
So there are three places where legal questions came up that we got responses on. And I think they may all have been discussed to some degree, but there was one, or the sections, but not necessarily the advice. So just wanted to flag, and maybe it's not worth changing or discussing right now. Apologies, I'm flying around here trying to find it. But I wanted to make sure that it was known to the subcommittee before you make a determination on the document. So for B3, C, we discussed this one, which was about, does this conflict with the charter? And the short answer is no, so long as their involvement is also great as to afford the director little discretion in the hires. And that is something that the details of which are not here. So again, no particular concern on that. There was a suggested text there in that document as well on this section, I should note. And that may be worth either the subcommittee or the full commission addressing. The second part was about the auditor's independent legal counsel, which was here. There was a question, does the auditor's independent legal counsel need to be approved by the city attorney's office? And they have a charter. In the charter, there is text that protects the auditor's ability to get legal counsel where they, not as a part of the city, but as the auditor's office itself, are the client. And there's also text in the code, the current code, which relates to the requirement that unless otherwise exempted, either in the charter or in the code itself, independent legal counsel generally needs to be approved by the city attorney's office. So again, not necessarily anything that contradicts here, and not necessarily anything to have to build in, but just something to mention that there was advice received. And I can pause here since I see Co-Chair Dan has his hand up.
Thank you. Go right ahead, Co-Chair Dan.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to flag that for a note to our future selves so that when we get to the full commission with this, we talk about having a recommendation that part of city code be amended to make sure that the board can hire its own legal counsel. Because we can't do that just by writing this, waving a magic wand. But if we put a note to our future selves as part of our request to city council, I think that would be good. So if we can flag that and tell the commission about it when we get there, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm just going to get the number here. Yeah, and then the third part, which I don't believe was discussed and maybe is a bigger question than the subcommittee should discuss, is in section A2A. And it's the comment up here from Co-Chair Dan about, and there was a discussion on this, would a hypothetical city hiring freeze applying to the oversight board / bureau be a violation of the independent judgment of the board? And I don't want to read this out into the record, but I do think members may want to read over the legal advice on this and then reflect on whether or not to adjust anything as needed. The oversimplified summary is that it probably would apply as per the city attorney's office, but that's one piece of input to consider. So yeah, just wanted to make sure that those three were flagged because we did receive a response, and it may or may not be relevant to the particular text given the way that the document and the conversation has gone subsequent to their question being asked. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, staff. Any questions, comments, concerns? Any additional places we need to go to, Co-Chair Dan? So the commission has completed discussion on this document. And next on the agenda is discussing whether the subcommittee should refer the document to the full commission with all the changes we've made today incorporated into the text. There is a potential agreements document that was circulated that gives some context as to this decision. It also says that co-chairs and staff would be authorized to fix some of the formatting and typos prior to the full commission's consideration. Before seeing if there is consensus around referring this document, we're going to hear from the public. After that, we'll ask if members want to make any final tweaks and then ask if they are ready to make a decision. We ask members of the public to keep their comments to 3 minutes in length and to keep their comments focused on the draft document. You can raise your hand in Zoom if you'd like to be called on. I'm not seeing any. So would any members of the subcommittee like to revisit any portion of the draft areas of agreement? Is there any strong opposition to referring the draft areas of agreement to the full PAC for its consideration? Is there general agreement around referring the draft areas of agreement to the full PAC for their consideration? Yes.
No, I want to thank everybody on the subcommittee and the staff and the other members of the commission who've helped us get to this point. And I really, I'm very pleased and proud that we're able to finish this at this meeting. Thank you so much, everybody.
Congratulations, everyone. Truly, truly. I will now pass it over to staff to discuss next steps.
Yeah, first off, I'll join in the congratulations and thank you to everyone. Next steps for this document is that it gets referred to the full commission, similar to the process that the full commission just went through with the areas of agreement on reporting and transparency. After the subcommittee consideration, it goes to the full commission. They consider it, usually takes a portion of 2 different meetings or so. Sometimes it's done in one. And then after that's approved, it becomes the areas of agreement, not the draft areas, and is part of the process that eventually develops city code recommendations when it's sort of converted into legal text. That process will start next week. It's not 100% certain, but it'll probably start next Monday with the full commission meeting. There are 3 things that the full commission is discussing in the next couple weeks, next week and the week after. So I'm not certain how long each one will take and when it'll get to it, but that is the process. And that process includes the full commission discussion on the document, possible proposed changes or adjustments to the text, and finally a review of the values and goals of the commission and a decision to approve the areas of agreement. So that this will be circulated to the full commission following tonight's meeting for them to get ready on it, and they may propose changes. Any member of the subcommittee can also propose changes. Those will be shown in track changes and sort of be essentially pre-proposed things that the commission will work through as a whole. And yeah, the other thing that should be mentioned in terms of the schedule is the subcommittee on board membership is meeting on Thursday. If it's its last scheduled meeting, and if it does finish its work and refer its document on, then the full commission will meet next Monday and have that to consider as well. And if on the other hand, it does not finish its work on Thursday, then Monday the 24th will be another subcommittee on board membership meeting, and the full commission will meet and start discussing this document as early as Thursday the 27th. Any questions on any of that? Okay. Well, congratulations again, and thank you, and I'll pass it back over to Dr. Moses.
Wonderful. I have in my I'm so sorry. I am going to ask us to go to public comment first before the garden plot. We're going to take open public comment on the issues the subcommittee is discussing, and ask community members to tell their story about policing and police accountability. So the subcommittees now allow members of the public to give public comment up to 3 minutes in length. So please raise your hand in Zoom if you would like to speak. I'm not seeing any either, so thank you. So we will now move to the garden plot, and this is the opportunity for co-chairs, commissioners, and staff to make note of future items. So co-facilitator Corinne, do you have any garden plot?
No, thank you, but congratulations to the subcommittee.
And thank you so much for your help tonight, Corinne. Really appreciate it. Staff?
Just a note to check for the when we kind of have the opportunity to circle back to old documents is the part coming up that this might apply to, the whether or not some of the items that may need to be in powers and duties documents are also there. Nothing else.
So can you say that again? Powers and duties review?
When we get to powers and duties review, there may be a opportunity to cross-check if the auditing portion is also under structural oversight, for example, and just to circle back and verify. It's not necessarily an item that needs any time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Co-chairs, are there any garden plots?
I can't think of any, but I'm sure Dan has some.
Well, I mean, the one thing that we put there at the end to talk to our future selves about, that's a garden plot item. And I'd also like to point out, like somebody asked in the Q&A about the draft budget that I drew up and that we posted here, and it's a public document now, so SAP did say that they are going to post it. It's not, again, it's not part of the document we just approved, but it will be among the documents that you can find on the PAC website. And I think I might personally email this to the members of the board membership subcommittees for their review before their Thursday meeting as they come to their, because they're discussing their budget that night, just so they can see what we did.
So I just want to clarify, co-chair Dan, the request you said was to change city code recommendation for what in particular?
To make sure that we recommend they change the section about city attorney have to approve any outside attorneys being hired to make an exception for the new board.
Thank you. Just wanted to capture that. Okay. Thank you. So, as a reminder, you can now submit advanced public comment to the Police Accountability Commission via web form, voicemail, or postal mail. I would like to thank you all, the members of the commission who attended today's meeting, and for your contributions today. Thank you to our interpreters. Finally, thank you to the members of the community for attending and contributing your thoughts and your questions. If you have not already signed up for email updates, please also sign up to receive updates from the PAC. It is now 8:49 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.
Ooh, 10 minutes early.